Okay, so I'm feeling that you're really frustrated by how the lesson went, and it's really important that I want to try and look past some of those external factors that you've mentioned, right? So I saw students entering the room without being greeted, and it felt like there was a lack of routine. Did it feel like that to you?
Yeah, I suppose so. It was just really chaotic. They were just out of control, and they just didn't settle down at any point during the lesson.
And that's hard, isn't it? That's how it feels, and sometimes it gets away from you. Let's try and think about what you might have done differently that might have mitigated some of that chaos, maybe giving you a bit of control back. So what's your routine normally like with that group?
Well, Joe, I do everything that you told me to do. So I stand at the door. I've got 1 foot in the corridor, 1 foot in the classroom. I greet them all. I say bonjour and ça va as they come into the classroom. And then I ask them to get on with the do now, and the do now is always on the board. And that's sort of my normal routine with that class.
Yeah, and that sounds really good to me. And that what's reassuring is that you've got that clarity of structure of what you want to achieve from your starting routine clear in your mind. I didn't see that clearly in today's lesson. Is that fair?
Yeah, I suppose so.
Okay. So rather than like getting overwhelmed by the chaos of it all and being upset about it, let's try and drill down into a specific element that we can work on. So let's focus on Jimmy. You singled him out as challenging. What happened today when Jimmy came to your door?
Well, he was just really energetic and full of life, and he sort of bounded through the door shouting, "Bonjour, miss!" And then, his uniform was all over the place, and so I asked him to sit down and work quietly, but he just didn't sit down, did he?
And it took him a couple of minutes to get to that point. So in terms of your normal routine and what happened with Jimmy today, let's give today's routine with Jimmy a score out of 5, 5 being perfect, nailed it.
Can I give it 0?
I can see why you might want to, but no, you can't. We've got to remember that you did some of the right things, right? So you did address him, and you did ask him to do what you wanted. So it's not 0, Tracy.
Okay, 1 or maybe 2.
Right. So when there's a number of external factors at play, and the odds start to pile up against you for getting that settled start right, it's important to consider your routines and your approach to tackling them. Now, I'm not saying that you can always have 1 foot in and 1 foot out and do all those things perfectly, but we've got to think about what we're doing as well as what the kids are doing. So what would you say to another teacher who'd had that issue on entry with Jimmy?
I think I would tell them just to make sure that their routine is consistent and to sort of use the normal routine with. And
that would have helped, but that was really hard today, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So you couldn't stand at the door, you were attending to other things that were going on. It was already a bit of a buzzing room. However, it's important that we nail it and we get it right, because Jimmy's poor start to the lesson had a negative effect on all of the other 30 kids in the classroom, hasn't it? So are there other tools that we can use?
Yeah, maybe I should have given him a warning, or probably should have used the school's behaviour policy earlier.
It's important to establish that, isn't it? That's what sets the boundaries, that's what sets the tone for the lesson, and that can signal to the rest of the group where your boundaries are for behaviour that you won't accept, and then they're less likely to cross that line themselves. I think you get that, right?
Yeah, no, I do, but it's just hard, because if Jimmy walks in and he doesn't do what I want him to do, and I start giving out warnings and punishments in the first minute of the lesson, it just doesn't set the right tone at the start of the lesson.
So that's really interesting. So what tone are you shooting for? What are you aiming for?
Well, I want everyone to be engaged in the learning. I want them to enjoy the learning. And I don't want them to think, or for me to feel like we're just going to be fighting with each other and arguing and sort of conflict right from the very start of the lesson.
And that is a really positive instinct to have. You've got an idea of the culture you're trying to create. But when your routine's disrupted, you can try to use other strategies to reinforce the behaviours that you want to see. And positive reinforcement is really, really powerful. And sometimes it can be better to go to that before resorting to sanctions or the behaviour policy for exactly the reasons you just explained.
So what would that have looked like with Jimmy then today?
Well, you're right. In your assessment, he is very energetic, right? So one strategy we can use with a kid like Jimmy is we narrate the positive things we want to see and acknowledge how he's feeling. So for an example, today with Jimmy, the answer was sit down, do your work, which is not wrong, but it didn't really do much to engage or to acknowledge how Jimmy was feeling at that moment. So could we have started with something like, hi Jimmy, when he's energetic, meet him with energy. Hi Jimmy, I can see you're very excited today, but the way you came in, that's not how we normally enter this classroom, is it? What do we normally do? And so then it's not accusative, it's not confrontational, you're reinforcing the kind of values of your classroom, but you're keeping everybody smiling, the tone is staying the way that you want it to be in your classroom. And then you can channel his energy into something positive instead of into not doing what you've asked him to do.